And Mae Jemison, Vice President Kamala Harris was there. She spoke briefly at the Kennedy Space Center today about how this is really pushing the boundaries, this mission. Take a listen.
Today is very much on that path, about showing the great work that happens here with these exceptional public servants, these exceptional skilled professionals who have the ability to see what is possible and what has never been done before. How exciting is that?
Of course, she was supposed to be celebrating the launch, the successful launch. How serious is this hiccup or delay, whatever it is?
Well, I think, as Jake mentioned, it's really difficult to understand until the administrators, until the managers tell a little bit more about what's happening. I think what we should really understand, though, is that whenever you have a new vehicle, it's not just pieces of the vehicle, it's the whole dress rehearsal, whole process that has to be worked through. So finding out that something's not quite right with one of the instrumentations, or is it the actual engine itself, is really important. But that's part of the reason everything is so instrumented. We pay so much attention to everything that happens. I think it's one of those things that literally, if you think of it as a complete dress rehearsal, where you go all the way through, this is important.
And they've just said that Friday is definitely in play, so that they're not ruling out the Friday potential launch. This is so big also for women in the industry. They've got the first female launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson. It's significant to see a male-dominated industry, profession, I should say, really changing over these years. You were certainly part of that. How important is this?
Well, I think what it is that, you know, there's always been the talent, there's always been the capabilities. But at some point in time, we started recognizing that we had to include and use so much more of the talent that we have available to us. And I think in many ways, NASA has sort of led the way in pushing that talent to the forefront. That is, pushing it in the sense of allowing it to emerge. There's still a long way to go, but I think the recognition is really important. When you start to look at the purposeful idea that, you know, the astronaut classes have changed since the Apollo days, when there were no women, actually purposefully there were no women in the astronaut corps. And then when you think about the fact that there were no people of color in the astronaut corps until 1978, when we look at this last class that came in, it was half women. And there were a number of people of color in it. So it really is important that we're using the full talent that's capable to make this happen. And Andrea, something that you, Vice President Kamala Harris mentioned about the talented people who are working there. I want us to remember that it's not just the PhDs and the four-year engineers, it's also the skilled technicians who we rely on to do the work. So that's the reason why it's critically important that we do a tremendous job recognizing the talent and recognizing that we have contributions from people across the educational and technical spectrum.
Yeah, we only very belatedly recognized after a major motion picture the contributions, you know, decades ago of two, you know, mathematicians who were helping launch the trajectory of the original Apollo missions. Mae, there's also a major national security issue here with the escalating pressure from China, their space race. So how does this impact the U.S. government should there be a delay in this mission?
Well, I don't think China is in the position right away to put people in space onto the surface of the moon. But, you know, when we start to look at this, I think what's remarkable about this mission and about the Artemis mission is that there's so many international partners part of it. And so not only do we have the vehicles that have been developed from the U.S., but we also have ESA participating in vehicles. So it's really incredible. And the other part of this is, I know we talk about it in terms of, a stepping stone to Mars, but it really is part of our journey as we establish a permanent moon base. And so it's much more than just, are we in a race against someone else? It's really about how do we develop technologies? How do we make sure that they benefit life here on Earth? When I want to just mention one thing, Andrea. People have talked about the vehicle that is Artemis, and it has a real pedigree that starts from Apollo. Not just that Artemis was the Greek god Apollo's sister, but one of the engines that's having a problem was one that was used and modified from the shuttle. But that was an engine that was modified from the Saturn V that first took humans to the moon. And so what we're seeing is a continuation and an evolution of the knowledge we have, of the capacities that we have. I'm struck by the fact that I lived in a house that was built by Jim Irwin, who was one of the Apollo astronauts when I came down to Houston, unbeknownst to me. And it's one of those things that there's just this continuity. Watching the Apollo folks when I was a little girl on the south side of Chicago, being part of the space shuttle, which was foundational for helping us create these vehicles, learn so much more, International Space Station. Now we're continuing it forward.
Well, you've been such an important part of that continuous history, and all to the good. Mae Jemison, thank you very much. Good to see you.